Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Line Movers Network College Football Breakdown Edition here. I'm Ian Robbins here with Trey Edge, bringing you your final week of the regular season of college football breakdown, a little Thanksgiving weekend special, rivalry weekend, as we come along to the home stretch of the regular season. A lot of things to talk about here, a lot of exciting things. First of all, we are the Line Movers Network. Ian Robbins and Trey Edge with you, bring you some college football talk. Follow us on Twitter at @the_LM Network. Visit our website at thelinemovers.net. And we'd love to hear from you, interact with you, talk some ball with you. So here we go. Last week of the regular season been a marathon. A lot of things have shaked out, as we've talked about, discussed before. A lot of movement. College football rankings. We're recording this Tuesday night, just came out. See Cincinnati, our beloved Cincinnati, in the top four. Still a lot yet. Finally. Still a lot yet to be determined. We'll talk about some of these games, and we'll see kind of how the landscape is going to shake out, how we think it might shake out, any value still left on the board as we head into conference championship season into next week. But still a lot left to be determined this week. A couple games that we'll talk about, big games on the docket. Remember, this week is a special week with Thanksgiving being. We got some couple games on Thursday, just the appetizers. Full slate on Friday, full slate on Saturday. So be ready for some action on Friday and Saturday. Fill all your college football favorite needs here. Let's get right into it. Big game, big house. The game, as some people call it, out in the Midwest where I live out here now. Ohio State at Michigan, 12 Eastern time. First game of the day. This one's for the Big Ten. This one's for a spot in the Big Ten championship game, spot in the top four of the playoffs. Kind of an elimination game, so to speak. Ohio State at Michigan. We got Ohio State laying 7.5, open 7.5, now up to 8. On the road, 8-point favorites on the road, over under set to 64.5. What do you think for the big game, Trey?
Man, it's so much is put into this about recent history. When you think about Ohio State and Michigan, the last 8, Ohio State's won. I mean, this has been a series that's been dominated by the Buckeyes, and you don't think it carries into lines per se, but it certainly carries into how people bet it. Especially when you've got an Ohio State offense that has the number one scoring offense in the country, 47 points a game, and what they did last week. I mean, C.J. Stroud was 32-35, 432. You nailed it, calling him for over 400 yards last week, 6 touchdowns. I mean, all those things roll into everybody discounting Michigan. The gaudy numbers, the history of this matchup, it's interesting because if you look at those numbers and everything for Ohio State, 362 yards passing per game. This is not Michigan State's defense. They're getting ready to play. Michigan State had the worst pass defense in the country. We talked about that right here on the podcast last week. Michigan has the 8th best pass defense in the country. Does that mean they're going to shut C.J. Stroud down? No. But this is a different defense. They're playing at Michigan. That in and itself is going to get you points. Michigan has been an against the spread machine this year. They're 9-2 against the spread this year. That lone loss to Michigan State where they gave up 37 points. I mean, I kind of look at that as an anomaly. I just don't think that's who they are. But this game, if you look at it, is going to come down to these quarterbacks, and everybody's going to gravitate toward C.J. Stroud. Ohio State's pass defense is not good. They give up 252 yards a game. That's a lot for a premier team in the playoff picture. So you factor all those things in, it's a lot of points for me. Anything above a touchdown, at Michigan in this type of game, is a lot to me. And I think we've seen Ohio State struggle a little bit on the road. And I just think it's a lot to ask to go in this rivalry matchup with all that's on the line and assume that Ohio State is going to roll. I mean, that was a scrimmage they played last week. Let's be real. I mean, that was nothing. And Michigan played well last week. I think that defense will be hyped. The home crowd, you cannot underestimate that. Do I think Michigan's going to win this game? I'm not sure I can say that. But do I like him at home and you're giving me a touchdown or more? And you and I talked, it may be more by the time Saturday rolls around. I'm rolling with blue. I'm taking the Michigan Wolverines to cover.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. Ohio State played a perfect game last week, and it was set up for that. I mean, Michigan State just could not match up. Yeah, they're a great story. They were one of the most overrated top 10 teams. Get that top 10 team, get that fraud team out of here now that we're
agreed.
The thick of things. They just had no answers. They're overmatched. They didn't have the players. They've been a one-man show all year, and Michigan State didn't belong in the same field as Ohio State, and they weren't. So now people are seeing Ohio State coming off that perfect game. And they did pitch a perfect game. I mean, Stroud was perfect. The receivers were perfect. The talent was just massively better at Ohio State than it was at Michigan State. And Michigan State's had a great year. Mel Tucker got his extension. Great. But now we're talking a different game. Now we're talking about Michigan. Michigan brings in the blue chip recruits. Michigan, it's funny. Coach Harbaugh's had this hype around him for so long about get over the hump. There wasn't hype around this team coming this year. Yeah. And all of a sudden they find themselves right in the thick of the national title playoff race here. And it's kind of was unexpected. And they're in this big game now. And everyone's not talking about Michigan, Harbaugh, talking about Ohio State. People are actually saying Ohio State might be the best team in the country. I mean, I don't know how people can think that they're better than Georgia.
I agree.
You see, because they had a great game. I mean, do we go back a couple weeks ago when they struggled, barely hung on to win at Nebraska? We're still talking about a first-year starting quarterback going on the road to a hostile environment for a big rivalry game against players that match up. NFL players on the other side of that defense. There were no NFL players playing on defense for Michigan State. There's a first-round pick. There's an All-American, Aiden Hutchinson, coming after. He might be able to get some pressure on him. This might be his big game, his big moment. They have the talent to match up, and I think Hutchinson, they're able to get some pressure on Stroud, cause him a little uncomfort. Ohio State's got great receivers. We saw that. 3 guys going to the NFL, playing on Sundays. But if you get pressure in a quarterback's face, it causes them to get off their rhythm. If Hutchinson and crew can get some pressure and cause Stroud to get off his rhythm, stay with it early, I think this is going to be a game. And I think going on the road into this environment, we've seen some of these young quarterbacks struggle on the road. We saw C.J. Stroud struggle on the road earlier. Now he's the Heisman favorite, hype around him. It's just a typical sell high spot that I see for Ohio State. We bought them low last week. I mean, not low, but we bought them last week. I think this is the time that you sell that stock if you have it, especially with the spread. In terms of the spread, they might not lose, but I think this game is definitely going to be under a possession. And I do think the spread's going to move. It might touch 10 by the time we get to it.
Agreed.
I would wait on the Michigan side. For Michigan to win, control the ball. Freshman J.J. McCarthy's had some troubles when he's come in, protecting the ball. That's kind of what got him in trouble against Michigan State. And they got to protect the ball. Blake Corum, the running back's going to, maybe make a play or two, control the game up front, and they're going to be in this game. 64.5 is way too high of a number for me. I like that under, and I'd take Michigan on game day.
We're on the same page.
Yeah. That's a big one there. Definitely implications. Another one with some playoff implications, maybe not so much front end, but we'll talk about this. We got Oklahoma traveling Stillwater to take on Oklahoma State. Battle of 2 one-loss teams in Oklahoma. Bitter rivalry game. A little flip of a typical favorite. Oklahoma State is a 4-point favorite with an over-under of 49.5. I can't believe we're talking about this game with an over-under 49.5. 5 years ago, this would have been like 89.5 or something. But here we are. Oklahoma State fresh off their easy win coming into this game. Oklahoma kind of got their rebound victory. So they're both primed, ready, and looking forward. So just to set up the Big 12 title picture, they don't have divisions. Here's how we stand. Oklahoma State is in to play next week. They know that they're playing next week, but they're still got bigger hopes alive. Oklahoma, with a win, will be in, and they will have a rematch next week against Oklahoma State. That'll be an interesting handicap that we're going to talk about if that happens.
No doubt.
If Oklahoma State were to beat Oklahoma and Baylor wins their game, Oklahoma State would have a rematch against Baylor, and Baylor would try to avenge that loss. If Baylor loses, no matter what happens, we see a rematch of this game next week. So a very interesting game, a very interesting handicap that'll happen if we have a back-to-back rematch here. But let's talk about this game. Oklahoma State, 4-point favorites, 49.5 points on the over-under. Oklahoma State's the home team. What are you thinking here?
Yeah, it is bizarre. That total, 49.5, and it's come down. I think it opened at 51. So trending toward the under. And the reason is that Oklahoma State defense. And when have we ever said that? I mean, who associates that kind of defense with Mike Gundy and that team out of Stillwater? But it's not a fluke. You get on a good run halfway through the season, and then you get exposed. Maybe you have some great defensive stats. Then you play some real teams, and you find out, well, we're not as good as we thought we were. They're legit on defense. It's not a joke. I mean, you look at what they've done. Just look at the last 4 games. 4 straight wins. They've allowed a combined 23 points. That is crazy good. I don't care who you're playing. That's incredible. And 13 tackles for loss, 5 sacks, 23-0 last week against the Texas Tech team that scored 41, by the way, against Iowa State. I mean, they can put points up, and Oklahoma State just completely shut them down. Also on the Oklahoma side of things, incredible. 9-0 against the spread the last 9. That's 9 in a row. 9-2 against the spread this year. So they've been a machine. And when I look at them in the matchup against Oklahoma, I mean, it sounds like I'm all over Oklahoma State. I think this is a tight game because of that defense. But you can be deceived by Oklahoma. Okay, it's a good win against an Iowa State team last week, 28-21. But if you dive into that a little bit more, quarterback Caleb Williams had 1 touchdown passing, 1 touchdown rushing. Kennedy Brooks had a touchdown. The 4th touchdown was a fumble recovery. It's not like that offense went wild against Iowa State, and they're playing a much better defense in Oklahoma State. What gives me pause on the Oklahoma side, if I'm leaning that way, they've scored 42 points the last 2 weeks combined. They were averaging 42 points a game their previous 8 games. So they've slumped on offense. Caleb Williams came out and he made a great play, and everybody said, oh, he could be in the Heisman race. They've come back to earth. They're not the offensive juggernaut that we're accustomed to in Lincoln Riley's offense, and now they're playing one of the best defenses in the country. So, with all that said, Oklahoma's defenses played well. They had 7 sacks last week against Iowa State. It's an interesting matchup and one that Oklahoma's dominated. 6 straight wins versus Oklahoma State. They've actually gone 4-0 against the spread last 4 at Stillwater, so they've traveled well. But it all leads me to a tight game. I kind of look at this and think, well, I love Oklahoma State's defense. Makes me want to take them for the game, but I'm giving 4. That 4 is a tough line for me. So I look at that defense. I think you and I are kind of on the same page here. I lean toward a lower scoring game than we're used to. Maybe look at the under here. And I like Oklahoma State to win in a tight one. But spread-wise, if I'm making this bet, and it's 4, I'm taking Oklahoma with the 4.
Yeah, I'm totally with you there. I think this could be like a 10-point game late, and Oklahoma comes in the back door with a cover. But I look at this Oklahoma State team, and I was talking to a friend of mine, and he said, Oklahoma State, if they don't give up any points, they're not going to lose any games. And it's so true. So true. And that's how they've been. They didn't give them any points last week. Actually took Oklahoma State this morning, 66-1 as a flyer to win the national championship. This is banking on the fact that I think they can get in the playoffs as a 4 seed if some things happen. We'll talk about that a little bit later. But Oklahoma State has been a team that's improved, gotten better. They struggled early. They had the loss, which they were 7-point underdogs in that loss. It was a close game. They covered that spread. They've gotten better. They have a dominant run game. They have a dominant defense. They have a veteran head coach. They have a veteran team. And they're playing like they belong. It was an easy letdown look ahead spot last week. And they didn't stop. They started out slow, but they kept their foot in the gas. They did what they had to do. They covered a 10-point spread. And here they are with a chance at home to beat Oklahoma, to take control of the Big 12, and to maybe make a push for the playoffs, a real push for the playoffs, very much under the radar, kind of coming out of nowhere too on the scene. And, flip it to what Oklahoma's working with, and there's a lot of unknown there. Lincoln Riley's name is coming up a lot of these open searches here. And, I gut feeling, I'm also kind of, Florida in me with that one of those big job openings. I think Lincoln Riley makes the jump this year with the SEC on deck. I think this might be a time for him to leave. But Oklahoma is also a team on offense that's catered around freshmen. Caleb Williams, freshman quarterback. Mario Williams, their top receiver, freshman receiver. Very talented, but freshman going on the road to a hostile environment, tough situation in a rivalry game. He came in off the bench to beat Texas. Yep. That's a Rattler start game. How quick is Coach Riley going to go to Rattler if they get down there? And I do think, they've been slow to start. They get themselves in trouble. They couldn't come all the way back against Baylor. They got, it was tight with Iowa State last week, and they got that turnover that you mentioned at the end to kind of seal the deal, let them play with a lead. They're going to need to get out early against Oklahoma State. They're going to need to force Oklahoma State kind of out of their comfort of run the ball, play defense. Their quarterback Spencer Sanders has been great, but they've been carried by the run game. And they've gotten better, and they went up front in the trenches. And you went up front in the trenches, you control the game, you could play with anybody. And I just think Oklahoma State's got a special year. 4 points is a lot. I'm worried about that back door with a game like this.
Me too.
I think like a 20-10, 2017 final, something like that. 23, 20, somewhere in that area. Don't like a lot of points. I think it's be a little slow moving game. I think Oklahoma State's a team to look for in the next couple of weeks, though, for sure.
It's funny you mentioned that. The two marquee games that we've talked about both have freshman quarterbacks on the road in Ohio State and Oklahoma, and you're banking on that. Those schools are, and we've seen it too many times. Doesn't mean they can't win the game, but they're not going to go in and throw 32 of 35 for 432 and 6 touchdowns. This is not going to happen.
Very talented, very different when you're playing in front of 90,000, 100,000 strong in a hostile environment against good teams.
Absolutely.
All right, let's go rapid fire a little bit. So we got 3 games. We'll talk about rapid fire. We'll talk a little bit about playoff implications with these and a little bit about conference title implications, some interesting games to look at here. So the first game and start off rapid fire. We got Cincinnati going on the road to East Carolina. Very interesting game here. Cincinnati coming off a very big-time win against SMU, blowing them out, getting some national respect. Now they're actually ranked number 4 in the playoff standings, breaking through finally and getting into that top 4 spot. They're laying 14 points on the road with an over-under of 57. Cincinnati, East Carolina, that's your area. That's your neck of the woods. What do you think about this game?
Yeah, man, this is classic. It's just a classic look ahead. Cincinnati has the conference championship ahead of them against Houston. You're playing an ECU team that not many people are going to give a shot here. That 14-point spread tells me a lot because by all rights, we would have thought 3 touchdowns, especially with the way Cincinnati played last week. That ought to tell you something right there. And yes, Cincinnati rolled last week. Again, you referenced perfect game earlier in this podcast. Cincinnati played that. It was SMU can beat them. SMU can beat them. Well, they smacked SMU. Now they turn around and they go to Greenville, North Carolina. And I'm going to tell you right now, it is one of the most underrated home field advantages you will see. It is absolutely a distinct home field advantage. It's not a huge stadium, but it is home field. They're crazy, man. They are rabid fans. And they're on a roll. Yeah, okay, they beat Navy and schools like that, but they are on a roll. Holt Naylor's their quarterback, threw for 405 and 3 touchdowns last week. They're 6-1 against the spread last 7. Cincinnati, everybody thinks they're rolling. Last 5 games are 1-4 against the spread. That one last week, they rolled. Okay. But they struggled in some of these games, and we've seen this before. Cincinnati knows what's ahead of them. Win this game, get to Houston, win that conference championship, you're in the playoff picture. This is a classic look-ahead spot, and I think ECU is going to give them fits. I do think Cincinnati wins it, but I will absolutely take 2 touchdowns in this game with the Pirates.
Yeah, this is one of my favorite sandwich spots, and I love looking at situations, especially this week, especially when you look at conference championship week with some teams having a little bit different mindsets. And Cincinnati is another it's a sell high spot, perfect game. Everyone's beating them up last week. SMU this, Cincinnati that. Cincinnati hasn't beaten anybody well. Cincinnati hasn't been impressive. all this, that, but and they came out and they did what they had to do, and they made their statement, and here they are sitting number 4. So here they go on the road.
Yeah.
And okay, let's just show up 2 touchdown favorites, beat ECU. We just got to beat Houston next week. We just got to beat Houston.
Exactly.
And there's another Houston standing in their way, and that's Coach Mike Houston with ECU, who's been really, really developing this program. We talk about program and development of some of these smaller schools, and he's really got ECU. They're bowl eligible for their first time. They are hungry. They are winning. They came won on a 54-yard field goal last week, walk-off field goal last week in a crazy game against Navy. And what did he do in the locker room celebration? He gave that walk-on kicker a scholarship right there,
scholarship,
which is amazing. And ECU has been rolling this year. It's their best season. This is a perfect upset spot, and I'm definitely sprinkling a little bit on that money line. For ECU. I
was wondering if you were going to call for that or not.
Oh yeah, I'm looking ECU outright right here. This is a spot. I love Cincinnati. I would love to see them in the playoff, but I think this situational spot calls for a little bit of a sprinkle on that ECU money line upset. Definitely within the spread. Definitely lower points. I think it's going to be a little bit slower moving game. But it's a very, very, very scary game. Cincinnati could prove us all wrong, just like they did last week, just like they did against Notre Dame. They certainly took the bell. Conference game's a little bit different, though, especially.
Absolutely.
And Cincinnati wins this game, put them in the playoffs, especially if they win next week. But this is a tricky game. This is definitely a tricky game.
Watch out, I'm telling you.
A little bit quicker breakdown for the next 2. Cincinnati, we want to give a little shot too. But next game, rapid fire, Alabama, the Iron Bowl. Alabama going on the road against Auburn Lane, 19.5 points, over under 56. Alabama dropped to number 3. It doesn't really matter. It dropped to number 3 in the playoff ranking tonight. Going on the road, take out on Auburn. Bitter rivalry in the Iron Bowl. What do you see here?
Yeah, hard to believe Alabama's giving this many points in this type of matchup. Recency bias off of Auburn losing 21-17 versus South Carolina. Auburn has struggled lately, but this is a game where it's not your typical Alabama. They're not the greatest running team in the country. It's been about Bryce Young. Here we are again, young quarterback on the road, hostile environment. It's Auburn's game of the year. They're going to sell out. This is everything to them. The season's not gone the way they expected. It's just a lot. And I look at what these teams' strengths are. Yes, Bo Nix is out. I get that. I'm just looking at the point spread. That's all I'm looking at. Do I think Auburn can win this game? No. But I'm just looking at Alabama going in and taking care of business, getting to the SEC championship game. I just can't get there with almost 3 touchdowns. For that reason alone, I'm taking Auburn at home to cover that spread.
Yeah, I don't get this spread. Alabama has shown nothing to be a 3 touchdown favorite. They keep being 3 touchdown favorites in these games, and they keep playing 1-score games. And Alabama, you said Auburn's big season. This is it. Alabama, I don't think is on this. Things fall right. They beat Georgia, they'll be in. That's still, it all comes down to, can they beat Georgia? Can they beat Georgia? Can they beat Georgia? Not can they beat Auburn? Can they beat Georgia? And I don't know why there's 3 touchdown spread in this game. It's going to touch 20. I think it's going to go up, especially with Bo Nix being out. But at Auburn, second half, Saban has an eye to next week. Back door will be open. Give me the points all day in that game.
Right. I'm with you.
All right, moving on. Final game we'll talk about today. A little interesting, little Big Ten championship conference nugget, a rivalry game. Wisconsin taking on Minnesota. Wisconsin certainly turned their season around. So set up a little bit. The winner of this game does not control it. Wisconsin controls the destiny. Wisconsin wins. They're in the Big Ten championship game next week against the winner of Ohio State, Michigan. Minnesota wins this game. They're gonna know what's gonna happen. Minnesota wins this game. They can be in if Iowa falls to Nebraska. Now that game's on Friday, so Minnesota will know if this is a play-in game or not. If Minnesota wins and Iowa wins, Iowa will then take on the winner of Ohio State, Michigan. But with that game on Friday, we'll have an idea. So Wisconsin at Minnesota, big time rivalry game. States next to each other. Wisconsin laying 6.5, 7 points on the road, over under 39. What do you think of this game?
Well, that over-under tells me a lot about where I want to go here. I mean, these are 2 really, really good defenses. 13th scoring defense for Wisconsin, 8th scoring defense over there. For Wisconsin, 13th for Minnesota. Minnesota, has played good ball down the stretch. They lost a game they shouldn't have, but I go to quarterbacks here all year long, and I know Wisconsin's turned their season around and finished strong. I just don't like their quarterback. Graham Mertz has thrown 9 TDs and 9 interceptions. It's hard to trust that. And they trust their running game so much, but they're going against the number 14 rush defense in the country. So all that leads me to this over-under sitting there at 39, yet the spread being almost a touchdown. How do I get to a touchdown spread in a 39-point game? It's tough for me to get to. Because of that, and you almost want to sprinkle a little bit on that over 39 just because it is so low. But because of the spread and the points, the over-under at 39, I have a hard time seeing Wisconsin win this game by touchdown. I'm taking the Gophers and the points.
Yeah, simple handicap for me. I think teams are pretty evenly matched. I think they've had up and down seasons. Both have had their moments of good and bad. Minnesota's a better quarterback. Better quarterback. And it comes down to me who's going to make less mistakes, and I think that's Morgan. And I think Minnesota with the touchdown cushion is the play there. Interesting to see if this is a play-in game as well. A lot to be decided this week with conference championships, with national title pictures, with bowl projections, with coaches on the mend. A lot of big jobs opening with Florida, USC, and LSU now. So a lot still of action going on. But rivalry weekend, big time games going on this weekend. We'll look ahead, just give you a little preview into what we have going on. We'll have a full conference championship week breakdown edition next week. Excited to break that down and see where we might project the playoffs out to be. Then we'll have a couple of bowl episodes for you, break down each bowl week. We'll talk about the playoffs in a little bit bigger picture and a little bowl competition on the horizon for the Line Movers Network. So take a look at that. Check us out on Twitter at _LM Network. I'm Ian Robbins at Robbins Ian. Trey Edge over here. Trey, what's your Twitter handle again?
At Edge_Trey.
All right. So look out for us. Look out Line Movers Network. A lot of things coming out. Enjoy the holiday. Happy Thanksgiving. Enjoy some football. Nothing better than Thanksgiving and football, especially some college rivalry football. All right.
Happy Thanksgiving, everybody.
Happy Thanksgiving. We'll see you next week.